Hey everybody, it's Sam with Pro Wrestling Overtime. Wanted to touch base with you guys and really start August off right, brand new month, and wanted to talk about WWE Summerslam, the 2022 event that was held. Some of you know that I have been out and about and traveling around, and I just haven't had the time sit down and put my thoughts into words for you guys to hear. So kind of wanted to do that now. As many of you know, SmackDown last Friday, was in Atlanta, which is about three and a half hours away from Nashville. So what you saw was a little bit of the SmackDown superstars kind of being split on what they wanted to do. Some of them got hotels in or near Atlanta, slept, then got up early and flew to Nashville. It's, 45-minute, hour-long flight, probably an hour and a half altogether. But others, with it only being a three and a half hour drive, after they got done with their part in SmackDown, they had already rented cars and loaded up, drove the three and a half hours, like I said, from Atlanta and got into Nashville about 3:30 in the morning, and then just slept until they had to go over to the stadium. So it just kind of depended on who it was, what they wanted to do, how early they wanted to get up, and things like that. For those of you who were at SummerSlam, you saw it was craziness. It was fun. I'm not going to tell you guys it wasn't. I think everybody that went would tell you that they had a blast. But with the roast of Ric Flair also happening on Friday night, there wasn't a whole lot of people out and about Saturday morning. However, late Saturday morning, you started seeing people running around for StarCast. StarCast 5, Claudio Castagnoli, absolutely fabulous in his panel. Some of you who watch the internet, I saw it later. I didn't see it when he actually posted it. But Claudio was over in one of the trailer setups that they had for Drew McIntyre and Sheamus. He was over there with them. If you went out later that night, you saw them out running around. They were at a couple different places downtown. Then, if you stuck around, I think it was at 1:30, you at StarCast got to see Renee Paquette, formerly Renee Young, interview for Sessions, her podcast, Daniel Bryan. That I found extremely interesting. For those of you who weren't in Nashville, I believe she released it yesterday, on Tuesday. If you go to any of the major platforms, go to Sessions by Renee Paquette, and you can hear her talk with Daniel Bryan. They're very comfortable with each other. Daniel Bryan, not that he wasn't. I thought that Daniel Bryan has been extremely open and honest throughout his whole entire career. If you, again, listen to a different podcast, The Art of Wrestling by Colt Cabana, and you go back several years, and I'm talking 2014, maybe 2013, You hear Daniel Bryan on there. He actually made a documentary with Colt Cabana about their life on the road. I believe it's called Road Diaries. He has always been able to talk and tell you. He's very articulate. In WWE, again, he wasn't as open. He couldn't be, especially about his injuries or even about what they were planning on doing with him. Because a lot of times he just didn't know. He could tell you what he had pitched or what certain writers that had been writing for him at that time were going to pitch. But he couldn't really tell you this is where this story is going. Then his last year in WWE, he got a lot more open and started not to drop hints, but just to flat out say, I am in contract negotiations right now. And that was a fresh breath of, air to hear him go back to being that way, but just to hear WWE Superstar not play games and not drop hints or say, well, you need to talk to a friend of mine or something like that, and then you go find them and they tell you whatever the wrestler wants to tell you. But since being in AEW, he is spilling it all. I mean, whatever question you have, it's always like he doesn't care to really talk about his thought processes or who he relies on in order to make that kind of decision. And I just found him extremely interesting with Renee Paquette. Some people, then you could see a little bit of a drop-off because some people went, I believe it was at 3, went to the New Japan Strong show, Music City Mayhem, and then, of course, you had to get ready for SummerSlam. I thought they shot SummerSlam wonderfully. They showcased the river, the skyline of Nashville, the people of Nashville, showing you different places to eat, showing you different places that people were going. And I felt the stadium set up. They did a really good job on it. However, you guys knew that there had to be a however. However, I didn't like the long, it's not really a runway because they were walking on the ground. They didn't have a ramp this time. But it just seemed like it took them forever to get there. And with some entrances, it heightened the anticipation as far as Edge. Him popping out, I don't know how many of you got to see that. I don't know how they showed it on TV, but with him coming out of a box and then coming down and walking, he walked a little bit and did one of his famous stands and points both fingers up there. Of course, they had fireworks. Then he walked a little more and they had some lights. And so it was broken up. So Edge didn't look quite as bad or boring as some of the others. There were others like Seth Rollins. I'm trying to think. Seth Rollins and Matt Riddle. In the walkway, there was a little bit of a curve in order for them to get to the ring. So you had Riddle coming one way. You had Seth coming the other. And in all actuality, they were supposed to kind of meet in that curve. However, from what I understand, I guess in walkthroughs or rehearsals, whatever, it was decided that that was narrow, would be hard to shoot, hard for the audience to also see, and for it more to be on Riddle's side, closer to the ring. And so you saw that, but Seth kind of stopped in his part. I think what he was doing was allowing the crowd and anticipation to build. However, Riddle doesn't have that kind of experience yet. So when they collided almost, it didn't seem as grand or as great as it possibly could have. Now, you guys know how I am. I like the down and dirty. So, I don't like it when kicks and hits and all, they look perfect. I don't want choreographed routines. Fights aren't that. Fights are down and dirty. So I was fine with it, but you could tell it wasn't exactly what was happening. Then you had Bayley coming out, and again, the walkway played into it. I thought Bayley did an excellent job of stopping when she should have to allow Dakota to come out. Problem was, you've got Bayley, who is a heel, yelling, pointing, making motions as she's coming down the walkway, and then stops, gets this kind of quizzical look, and you hear Dakota Kai's music hit. She turns and watches Dakota, but Dakota's got 50 miles to walk. So, I don't know whether they didn't plan for that, they didn't rehearse. I don't know exactly what happened there. It ended up Bayley being her natural heel self, continuing to yell at the crowd, point at Bianca. But it was a couple minutes there where people were like, what are we doing? Where are we going with this? Then, of course, when Dakota gets up, we hear Ito's music. Same thing, And so a lot of people, especially, I guess, those in the upper sections of the stadium, weren't 100% sure what was going on, what was supposed to happen. For those of you who couldn't see it, during Becky and Bianca's Raw Women's Championship match, which was pretty good, I thought, were there a couple mistakes? Yes. That goes back to, I'm not calling them botches and mistakes and stuff like that to make fun of them. Guys, in real fights, if you watch UFC, you're going to see people miss. You're going to see them want to do a certain move and someone slip out of it. That's what happens in fights. And so if we want wrestling to be fake fighting, that's going to happen. A lot of people wanted to point out that they slipped when Bianca was supposed to leapfrog Becky, and Becky was supposed to do a move after that. They ended up falling to the ropes. Again, that happens in real fighting, but then later we find that that sequence may have either been right after Becky hurt her shoulder or was the cause of Becky hurting her shoulder. Now, I have heard different things that she dislocated it, and by falling on her shoulder, it popped back in. so that it's not as serious as what they thought. Then I heard they didn't think it was serious, and they found out that she's got a second degree type separation type issue, had an MRI, and it's getting read today, and we should hear something about it today. Guys, I'm going to be real honest with you. I don't know which has happened. Haven't been able to get any answers through the normal ways that you would get information about that kind of situation. So I can't tell you any more than what they told you Monday night at Raw. Becky is out. It is to be anywhere from 2 weeks to possibly 10 to 12. On Saturday, I guess late Saturday, early into Sunday, we were hearing 2 to 4. Then on Sunday, people were actually hearing 2 months to 4 months. And then, like I said, Raw, we were hearing 2 weeks to 10 weeks. Guys, I think if they get the MRI back and she can be back before Clash at the Castle, then I think we do see her. I think she rehabs it. She really, and I can't stress this enough, she really wants to be at Clash of the Castle, and I think that's pretty much a no-brainer that everyone over in Europe wants Becky there. However, guys, I think if you see her, them saying 8 to 12 weeks, I think they put Becky on the shelf, and we don't see her to Royal Rumble. I really don't. She may show up day one, but I think they put her on the shelf. From what I understand, she was taking some time off between Thanksgiving and Christmas anyway, was possibly looking at going home or having family come over for an early celebration for Christmas. So I think if she gets, I would say after 8 weeks, I think we're looking at, Becky just being put on the shelf October, November, December. To get into the Bayley situation. Guys, I have reported for the last 4 months. Bayley's been ready to go. Bayley's been at every pay-per-view since WrestleMania. She was at WrestleMania. I think everybody pretty much made it clear that that was what was happening. They were having issues with creative, when to bring her back. I told you that they had been flip-flopping, whether to put her on SmackDown, whether to put her on Raw, whether to bring her back as a babyface, whether to bring her back as a heel. Bayley was pitching stories herself. And, of course, before Dakota was let go, and I need to stress that, before Dakota was let go, Bayley had already pitched a faction of her and Dakota and other members of NXT. So it was turned down when Triple H came in. Of course, anybody that wasn't on the shows could have came into the meetings. Others were sent emails. Others were actually phone calls. And Bayley then already had a list of pitches. And Triple H said, hit me with them. What have you been pitching? And he was intrigued with a couple of them, from what I understand. EO. People want to say, well, why didn't EO being at the pay-per-view, why didn't anybody report that? Well, not that I'm taking up for people, but, probably for the last year, has been appearing at different shows, has been there at pay-per-views. It's not a big deal. If all of a sudden Nikita Lyons from NXT would show up at a pay-per-view, everybody would be like, now wait a minute, is she appearing? Is she going to be debuting? Did they pull her up? And you're going to hear about that. You got to hear about it maybe last year, but it's not a big deal for certain people in NXT to show up at a pay-per-view or a show. Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be on that show. Also, before Stand and Deliver, before WrestleMania, had been appearing in dark matches. Actually, her and Dakota had taken on each other in a couple dark matches. So, at Stand and Deliver, Io gets hurt. I told you guys, end of April, beginning part of May, I saw Io, and she had a air kind of cast, boot, whatever you want to say, describe it, on her leg. And I was very open and honest with you guys that at the end of May, June, I can't remember exactly when it was reported, that Io was gone. That Io wasn't re-signing a contract, that she had basically said, I'm out here. I was like, I thought she was hurt. I haven't heard she's back yet. So I wasn't able really to find out a whole lot about the situation. Asked around, and she wasn't back at the Performance Center, wasn't, at NXT tapings or live shows or anything like that. So really didn't know. So seeing Io in Nashville, second biggest show of the year, would not have set off any alarms with me or probably anyone else that goes to shows. I mean, honestly, she's just not. So, Io being part of Bayley's faction, yes, tremendous surprise. Dakota being part of Bayley's faction would not have surprised me in that WrestleMania era because Bayley and Dakota, friends, they have wrestled each other on and off throughout the years. Dakota doesn't care to pick up the phone and call Bayley to ask any questions or anything like that. Bayley doesn't care to holler at Dakota, find out how she's doing, or vice versa. So that wouldn't have been a shock then. However, since being let go, Dakota stayed pretty much on the down low. I had heard that a couple promotions had approached her. She was not sure where she wanted to go, what she wanted to do. Then, as I told you guys, I knew that Shayna's contract should be coming up this fall. And I was hearing Shayna wasn't resigning and was possibly going to go into the gaming area of things. And I wondered if that was going to affect Dakota. So, yes, Bayley's compadres in this faction shocked me. Now we're hearing, or I'm hearing Indy Hartwell, JC Jane, Mandy Rose may be joining Bayley in the faction. it is my understanding Bayley pitched a 5-member faction. Also, not only did she pitch a 5-member, that since Becky got injured, since they're doing the Ronda getting suspended on SmackDown, Bayley has said, put 2 of them on Raw, 2 can be on SmackDown. I'll do both shows. If we need a bigger group or at pay-per-views, the 5 can come together. But otherwise, Bayley could run 2 shows. Herd Hunter, not really with that. Was like, I think that might be too much. You're just coming back. Let's kind of put that one on hold. But then I looked this morning and seeing where someone is saying Mandy Rose may be joining the crew. So that's interesting to me. That's extremely interesting to me. Logan Paul looked absolutely outstanding. They are not wanting him to wait to Royal Rumble. They are wanting him possibly at the Saudi show, and we may possibly see him Survivor Series, depending on his schedule, what he's doing. We are definitely probably going to see him at Day 1, Royal Rumble, and obviously WrestleMania. As far as Bobby Lashley with the United States Championship, you saw Ciampa move basically up. Everybody knows he's one of Hunter's boys, and you don't be surprised if, with Miz's help, Bobby Lashley would get beat. Now, I'm not saying that next week. I'm saying that over the next, I would say, 6 to 8 weeks. AJ Styles, is my understanding, also going to be possibly in the hunt for that. Edge. I told you guys that Edge had some issues when Vince retired. Edge and Beth were scheduled for the Madison Square Garden show. On Friday, they said, that they had some travel issues, weren't there. It was decided, from what I understand, Tuesday or Wednesday of last week, that Edge would be at SummerSlam. However, Beth wanted to set it out. So are we going to see Beth this fall? I don't know. I'm going to be real honest with you. I think that depends on any other changes that are going to be made, and if they're going to be made. If certain Vince crony, who has been around for numerous years working with camera cuts and looking up women's gear and down women's gear and making sure to zoom in on any gear malfunctions that the women may have, would need to go, from what I'm understanding. Pat McAfee, a lot of people want to know where he's standing. I think he is standing basically same direction as Logan Paul. Not going to see him in the wrestling ring on a weekly basis or even a monthly basis. He's going to be still considered special attraction. Hearing now, Mysterios are not breaking up. The leading candidate for tag team breakup, obviously, is the Street Profits. However, I don't know where that stands now that Hunter's in charge. Stephanie is not wanting to break up the Mysterios. It's Ray's 20th year. It they have a lot more places to go to celebrate, and with him being on the cover of the game still, also big compliments to him. Why break him up from his son and have one of them turn heel? As far as the Street Profits, guys, you I think you have to just have eyes in order to see Montez Ford getting bigger, doing what they've asked of him. He looked good against Seth Rollins. I think the question they have about him is, yes, he can look good with top talent. Randy Orton, Seth Rollins. How can he look with mid-card talent? Is he the type of wrestler who can bring somebody up to the next level, or does he always need to be in the ring with the top talent in order for him to shine? Because we know we could put me in the ring with Seth Rollins, and Seth Rollins would still have an excellent match. So I think that is what they're looking at. I know a lot of people were thinking that the Usos were going to lose at SummerSlam. Guys, I don't know that that was even considered with the new regime. Again, Liv Morgan, Ronda Rousey, people thought Ronda was going to win. I don't know that that was even considered by the new regime. They like the underdog Liv Morgan on SmackDown. Ronda Rousey, I'm hearing suspension at least 2 weeks off, possibly a month. So, who are we getting at Clash of the Castle for Liv Morgan? Well, from what I understand, Charlotte is due back, and that is who Liv Morgan is going to be taking on at Clash at the Castle. Who is Roman taking on after Drew McIntyre? Guys, like I told you in the last news and rumors, Roman will be taking Extreme Rules and Survivor Series off. He will be at Crown Jewel the Saudi show, but will not be at Extreme Rules or Survivor Series unless something changes, which they hope doesn't. So that's kind of where we stand after SummerSlam. Now, I'll break down probably Raw for you guys in the next day or two. I'm hoping to only be a day to 2 days behind reviewing things, giving you guys the latest and what happened when. With today being Wednesday, hoping to get Raw out today, hoping possibly to get NXT and NWA out. So as always, if you guys have any questions, comments, problems, or protests, you guys can reach me at prowrestlingot@gmail.com, prowrestlingot@gmail.com, or you can hit me up on Twitter at prowrestling, and that's 2 O's, Pro Wrestling. And I will talk to you guys later, and hopefully see you down the road.